Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to Afterburner. I'm Bill Whittle. Some of you may remember those thrilling days of yesteryear when President Temper-Tantrum told the American people that the sequester, which was not a budget cut, remember, but rather a very limited reduction in the increase in spending by the federal government, was, of course, the end of life as we know it. White House tours were canceled, Easter eggs went unhidden, federal parks closed, and air traffic control shut down flights into major cities like Phoenix and Los Angeles. I was on a flight that was canceled due to sequester-related shortage of essential personnel and all the rest. Well, Congress, and by that, of course, I mean the House of Representatives, actually held their ground. They told the Obama administration that while White House chefs may have been essential personnel, air traffic controllers certainly were. And then, after a great deal of moaning and complaining, things got immediately back to normal. And they have been ever since. We're still in the sequester. You know, they said the same thing about welfare reform back in the Clinton days, by the way. Cut one dime of federal spending and children will be dropping dead of rickets and scurvy on every street corner in America. Yeah, that didn't happen either. They fear this, you see. They fear this above all else, but we'll come back to that in a second. Now, for the what? The 12th, the 19th, 102nd time in the last 30 years, including almost yearly under Tip O'Neill as a means to get at President Reagan, who O'Neill obviously hated simply because he was white, the government has been shut down again. 17% round numbers of federal employees are furloughed as non-essential personnel. We'll come back to that in a moment as well. But meanwhile, the goal of this tyrannical administration and the street thugs, hoods, communists, agitators, grifters, and idiots that make it up from the bottom of the top to the top of the bottom have set themselves the same goal they had back with the sequester, namely, make it hurt. Make it hurt. Not allow it to hurt. And if you don't understand the difference here, you're missing the entire point. Allowing a government shutdown to hurt means, well, shutting down the non-essential parts of the government and allowing the chips to fall where they may. Once the American people realized that this meant that electricity went out, traffic lights no longer functioned, universities closed, etc., well, then they would make that displeasure known to their representatives. Now, none of that happened, of course. None of that happened because electricity is provided mostly by private companies for profit. Street lights are maintained by municipal and city governments. Universities are privately funded or run by the states. So now we're back to what these small people, these pathetic, genetically defective control freaks in Washington in general, and in this administration in best of show level pathology in particular, really and truly and genuinely fear. They fear that if the government shuts down its non-essential personnel, no one will really notice. Well, what does that number look like? Well, right now, it's approximately 17%. That's the percentage of the federal government that is non-essential. You could look at that 17% not as the sequester, which simply meant that we gave the federal government a slightly smaller annual raise than they asked for. No, this is an actual cut. If the American people become fully aware of the fact that they can get along just fine without the non-essential 17% of the federal government, then they may start asking why they can't have 17% of their taxes returned to them. You know, I'd like to know the answer to that question myself. Now, some people have said that Obama is being petty and adolescent by deploying the new Gestapo, that Smokey the Bear hat wearing National Park Service, as his primary weapon in making things hurt for the American people. It's not just barricades erected by supposedly furloughed rangers in order to keep the American patriots that kept this country free from freely walking through the monuments erected to their dead friends and to they themselves. It's things like keeping people on buses to prevent them from even taking photographs of the national parks that we the people, not King Obama, actually own. It's things like removing the handles from taps on hiking trails so that people can't get a drink. And the list of shameful, shocking, eye-opening jackboot tactics to make sure his pain is felt, not allow it to be felt, but to make it be felt, goes on and on and on. And of all the things I've seen that have worried, depressed, and angered me since this hope and change huckster came to the Oval Office, nothing has disgusted and worried me so much as the willingness, the ease, in fact, in many cases, the relish and the joy at which formerly innocuous-seeming people like park rangers have taken to kicking the American people in the groin. I will never forget this, not ever. And while I used to wonder where a dictator's private army would come from among formerly free people, well, I wonder no more. So, anyway, who's non-essential? Well, the facts are that about 800,000 of the 2.1 million federal workers are now furloughed. That's about the same number of people in San Francisco. At the Department of Commerce, 15,641 employees at the Census Bureau were told to stay home. It was the same story for all 169 people at the U.S. Economic Development Administration, as well as for the 49 workers at the Minority Business Development Agency. How many other federal employees are non-essential? It's hard to say. But I will say this. This man despises the American people. Time and time again, he has wistfully assured us that he's not a dictator and doesn't wish to be one. I don't recall Ronald Reagan or even Bill Clinton constantly assuring us that he's not a tyrant or a socialist. But it is clear that what he's doing is not, in fact, petty or adolescent. It's reasoned, it's calculated, it's critical, and it's desperate. Because if it fully dawns on us that we can do without most of this stuff, we might start asking for our money back. And without money to buy votes with, where would these losers be? Every single government worker is essential, you see. And if you dare question the king on this, well, he'll see to it that you, the American people, are punished for your insolence. Government workers are essential. What's not essential is the money you have to part with in order to pay for them. Got that straight? Cut a dime of the money you send them, and they will evict you from your private homes and try to close the ocean. You're just going to have to work harder and do with less. You're the ones who are non-essential, not them, especially not him.